I saw the title, and the title was Living on the Edge. Is that right?
Yeah, walking lightly on the edge.
Walking Lightly on the Edge.
Yeah.
What prompted that kind of title?
It's actually it's a line from a song. My son's, he's a musician, and he's written a song with this line in it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it sums up how I think my life is, and it's sort of walking, finding a balance, looking down both sides, and be careful not to fall one way or the other, because then you can't see the whole. You can't see the whole.
Right.
And also, it's a bit about mental health, because my involvement in mental health has meant that I've seen another side, that downside of the mountain, and it's also meant in my own family and my work that I've sort of experienced some of those struggles that people have. Mm-hmm. And so it's, in a way, it's enhancing, and in other ways it's quite, one has to be quite wary. And that's that walking lightly on the edge.
Right.
And that's the line of the song.
With the work that you do, what is it that you actually do?
The last few years I've been working in really combining, I'm trained lecturer, combining that with more sort of counselling, working with people with mental health issues. Yeah. Some of them have had a mental illness diagnosis, others have not, and created a course which is called Connections to Living and Learning, this was about 6 years ago, which was, the idea was to get people back into the community or back into TAFE, or sometimes just out of their rooms. You know, some guys have been there for 10 years, shut the door, and just out to shop every now and again and back
This
inside.
is in their room inside?
Yeah, in their houses. And so this was the idea was I've got music, we've got music art, but particularly music as a core, which engaged everyone. And then I work also at the Franklin Centre, which is attached to Greylands, which is a forensic mental health facility. And I teach creative writing, and Dave Johnson, who is a tape lecturer, a musician, he goes in and he teaches songwriting, guitar. We do that once a week. So that's what those are the three things, I guess, that I'm involved in.
It seems like music is a common chord.
Music is a common core, that's right. The other thing is it takes us away from, my sort of lecturing background is like, this is competency such and such or whatever. Yeah. But it takes us away from, it's not me saying this, it's like something here that we're equal.
Together.
And that's what it's about collaboration, and I guess that to me is really important, and that's one of the things in the GATE course, that we're working with somebody, we're not sort of imposing or assuming. We're equals, we're working together, and I'm asking you what it is you like to listen to, what it is you enjoy.
And is that the same thing across the like Street Beat and with the Franklin as well? The audience where it's a collaborative kind of thing?
Yes, yeah. It's harder at Franklin because sometimes the guys are heavily medicated, sometimes they, and not always, sometimes they might be like imagining stuff happening to them, or but there's still what I think is really important is that Dave and I both go in. We're from the outside. We're not OTs, we're not counsellors, and we're from TAFE, TAFE. Yep. But we're sort of, we haven't got any background. We're not medical, and so that people can relate to us just somebody who's coming in that they're meeting, because they're just they're not seeing anyone. They're locked up. They only see the people who are part of that service that's being provided. And that's the other thing. There's some really, really good writers.
What kind of things can people use or do so to expand their world?
Because that GATE course, for example, is music art and health stuff was central, but we amalgamated that with sort of units like personal development, communication. Right. So we use that as a means of engaging people, and, for example, taking initiative. Well, somebody might come in with a song, might actually talk about it to somebody else. That's communication. So we've got those generic skills that are within that. So we say, okay, we're doing songwriting today, but we're also doing, how are you working in a group? Are you listening to me when I'm talking about my song? How did we decide which line is going to go into that song? Because I always, when I watch Dave teach, I think, God, when he's working, because you've got 6, 7 people, all with a word or a
right.
line,
Okay.
because he does a lot of group songwriting. How do you decide which bit you're going to put in? That's all decision making, working in a group. So I guess in a way it's sort of, and then they do specific things like, Franklin, sometimes people need job search skills, so we actually say, okay, well today so-and-so needs such and such, so we
So actually do that specific
yeah,
writing.
you have to sometimes, yeah.
Right.
Or somebody comes in and says, I need to write to my son, and so we sit with him and help him to read the letter or write the letter. So,
All right.
yeah.
What you found was the most helpful, most beneficial tool, if you like, or thing that people have found most empowering for them to change themselves?
To change themselves.
Yeah.
Relationships. For a lot of people that I've worked with, in fact, it's no different to normal life. I believe that we all need a special relationship or somebody that connects with us. It's like connections to living and learning, of course. And they're looking for somebody that they can actually be with, that trust them, and that they can tell stories to, that will accept them. And I think that's the single biggest factor that a lot of the guys, men and women, are looking for. And they'll often say, after a while, I've still got no friends. Those guys that I used to smoke dope with, they're not my friends. They're not. I want somebody that likes me for what I am. Sometimes they've had a big gap.
Right.
Maybe 10 years they've been at home in a room, and then they're sort of in their own heads. And how do you relate to people? How do you talk to people?
How do they do that then? What I found, like, what kind of, how would they bridge this gap for themselves?
In the gate course, I had like young guy. I had men, male, female, young. Dave's relatively young, younger than me. I had a really young, very fit-looking woman who used to teach the fitness, and an older me. I'm the older person.
Yeah.
So try to sort of show whole like a subgroup, if you like, of people, society. This is our group. This is our society. This is the world. This is the people. And I'd relate to Dave. I'd relate. People are watching. They'd be watching us all the time. We talk about, maybe our family, talk about how we're fed up with something or how upset we are, and so modelling how do we relate in the world. That's all you can do, and try and keep connections with people. Phone them up, ask them what they're doing tomorrow. Be really interested, curiosity,
Yeah,
just
active
curious.
curiosity. Yeah.
And I am actually. That's why I'm interested in this. But I'm really curious about the lives that other people lead. Not so much like but just there's so much that you don't know about anyone, and I'm really privileged to be able to learn stuff that I would never have come across. Yeah, and I think, God, did you really do that? Does that really happen? And it's
It's funny when you were talking about that. A story just like a snapshot just related in my head. I went to in Subi, just went to the dentist, and I passed by one of the street sellers for the what's the magazine?
Big Issue.
Big Issue, right? And this time around, most people, right? When I lived in Sydney for a while, and with the Big Issue, people were there smiling, saying hi and whatnot. And usually, Sydney, big suburban, big Cosmo city, right? Grey, dark streets, people just go like automatons kind of thing, This time I did that. I had to go to the appointment. Couldn't be late for the appointment, into appointment. But there was the niggling thought in the back of my head, I want to speak to this person kind of thing. And I came back and she was standing there, just smiling as bravely as she could. And I engaged in the conversation. So hi, what's your name? Hi Debbie, how you doing? Kind of thing, right? And asking her, as you said, having the curiosity, right? And I know I could feel that just by speaking to her and listening to her, she really appreciated it. And then when I was speaking to her, I actually felt goosebumps. She said she suffered from depression. She always was at home, and she thought that this was an avenue for her to really go out there and be exposed to
people without having to really to have to be, she can move away from them.
Exactly, just that initial contact kind of thing.
I think it's just being seen. We all want to be seen, and we all want to be recognised for something.
Seen, recognised, heard too.
Heard.
Listening, I feel. I'll be interested. What do you feel about the listening skills or people in general?
Listening skills of people in general.
Active listening.
I'm more interested, and I think people generally are more interested in giving a view than really listening. The other thing is listening to what's not said. I mean, in my work, I know where the greatest changes have happened and the greatest leaps have been where I've picked up something that's not said.
So it's an intuitive feel.
It's just why is this happening, or what, somebody a gesture, or somebody looking down, or a shrug or a sigh, and actually listening to that, and then somehow asking more about that rather than what the person's saying.
Right.
Because a lot of things we just can't say.